toward finding peace with food and nutrition. In his free time, Taylor enjoys being outside in any part of the Mountain West. He also has a passion for music, especially the, am I going to say this right? Mahler symphonies?
Mahler.
Yeah. Mahler, thank you. He enjoys spending time with the planets, his cats, Neptune and Pluto. And next is Jessie Lopez. She is a registered dietitian and she's licensed in Missouri. She's what some may consider a jack of all trades. And when it comes to nutrition, she has worked in a variety of areas such as women, pediatric, bariatric, diabetic, renal, oncology, and sports nutrition. Throughout her career, she has been a WIC, clinical, and UCM and Sodexo campus dietitian. Jessie is the co-founder of True to Life Nutrition Counseling and Consulting, Inc., and provides outpatient telehealth nutrition counseling. Cody, I'll pass it on to you.
Thanks, Janine. Next, we got Lindsay Vaughn, who graduated with her undergrad degree in nutrition from Kansas State University in 2004. Then with her master's in nutrition from the University of Kansas Medical Center in 2006. She started working at Children's Mercy from the brand new clinic, Fit Kids, the Monday after graduation. Lindsay has been at Children's Mercy ever since. She is now a CNS IV, in which she manages all learning activities for the department, including the annual clinical nutrition pediatric forum. In her clinical role at Children's Mercy, she is the dietitian for the Beacon program, a medically complex primary care clinic. She currently holds the position of CPI chair elect of KSAND. And then to introduce our moderator for the panel, we have nutrition consultant, speaker, and writer, Claudia Martin, and hopefully I get your last name right, Ayodi, is that correct? Who has an MBA, MS, RD, and was born and raised in Jamaica, and her passion for global nutrition and education led her to switch careers from finance and risk management to nutrition. Claudia is a frequent speaker and presenter of nutrition topics at conferences, seminars, workshops, and also at Johnson County Community College, where she is the staff dietitian for dining services. She has also spearheaded efforts to combat food insecurity on campus. She volunteers her time to give nutrition presentations at various local middle and elementary schools. She's a featured health and nutrition writer for the Menopause Lifestyle website, the torcusyears.com, and has published articles in the Johnson County Lifestyle magazine. Claudia strongly believes in using healthy eating as a means to prevent some illness and to cure others. And that is all I have for the introduction. So.
All right.
So
Well,
Claudia, we can't hear you. Nope, not yet.
Now?
Yes.
Okay.
My worst nightmare come true. Hello, everyone, and thank you guys for joining us today. We are going to talk a little bit about diversity. And I know when you guys look at me, or you may think, yeah, she probably know a little bit about diversity. And you may be right. However, there's so much to diversity other than just black and white, no pun intended. And so tonight we're going to dive into diversity a little bit and talk about the different aspects of diversity, and it's not just one thing. And so hopefully with our esteemed panelists that we have tonight, you guys will be able to learn something and have a deeper understanding of how diversity affects us in our day-to-day life, and then also how we can make a difference as far as making our world inclusive for everyone. So we're going to have a series of questions tonight that we will ask our panelists, and they will respond, talk about how diversity affects them, how it impacts their ability to do their job in nutrition and dietetics. And then for those of you that are listening, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat box. And as we have time at the end of our presentation, we will answer some of those questions as well. So depending on our time, we may not be able to answer all the questions, but hopefully the ones we've answered will be beneficial to everyone concerned. So let's start. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let's start with the first question tonight. And the first question for our panelists, and I will start with you, Taylor, because you're like on the top corner left side of my screen. So I'm starting with you.
Awesome.
So through the dietetic lens, how has your life as a trans person impacted your career in dietetics?
Sure. First, I just want to apologize. It is storming super bad here. So I apologize if anyone can hear all the thunder and everything. Okay.
Oh, we
awesome.
can hear
You're
it.
good.
You're good.
I was like, no, it just started when this started. As a trans and queer individual, well, my pronouns are he, him, they, them, but it has definitely impacted my career, my career trajectory. And as I was thinking about this, like at first it was just like kind of like negative. So I was like, hold up, we got to think of some positives. But it's been really, really challenging, I would say, first and foremost. I think like the most prominent thing is I've been fired for being trans. And yeah, it sucks. Like you can still be fired in several states, and Virginia is one of those states. So yeah, that was 2020 last year. I mean, the tokenization, it's like, okay, we got to fill like the minority or diversity spot. So, oh, there you go. And that's something that I've been working really hard this year to kind of dismantle and be like, I'm going to do my thing, whether, people like it, don't like it. And like the position I'm in now has just been amazing. And it's just a whole world of change. And I think like not being taken seriously, that's been a challenge as well. And that's also changing, which has been awesome. And then on the flip side, something that's really awesome about being a trans and queer individual is I work with eating disorders, and when you have clients with a shared identity, it allows for a deeper connection and doing things like the body image work. They're just like, oh my gosh, like this is great. It sucks. It's really hard, but like somebody who, isn't going to just kind of push the standard narrative. So that's kind of the things that I thought of when I was thinking about that question. So thanks, Claudia.
Jessica, how about you? Thanks, Taylor.
Sure.
Hi. When I first decided to start my undergrad in dietetics and nutrition, I apologize starting off. If you hear little clicking noises, my puppy is a little restless right now. So he's kind of going all over the place and really thirsty right now too. So I don't know. But looking back, sometimes, there's that comfort in knowing that there are people like you within a profession. And of course, with being a part of the Latinx community in this area, it's not, I'm not aware of anyone else that's really a part of the Latinx community within dietetics. So that was a little bit different in knowing that, okay, going into this, it's going to look a little different for me because of my background of, a Hispanic culture and what we normally eat and what our lifestyles are like. And that was very different in coming into this career.
Thank you. Lindsay, your turn.
Okay. So it's kind of odd. I actually have to say it. We were talking last night, and the first time I was like, oh, I actually have to say it, which is weird. I am physically disabled, and with this whole pandemic time has been really the only time people have met me for long periods of time and don't know. So it's weird because that's usually the first thing people see. So if you can't tell, because you can't tell from looking at my head, I use a wheelchair 90% of the time to get around. So I was born disabled. So that's one of the things that comes up with disability is there's people that acquire disability, and then there's people that were just born that way. And so people assume different, I've had so many assumptions. Some of them are kind of funny once you get over it of how you got in a wheelchair. But there's just also just assumptions growing up that I was never going to be anything. My mother was told to put me in an institution, which I was born in the 80s. So that's not that long ago. So to be told to put your child in an institution, and I had to do tests just to go to kindergarten and to prove that I had the brain of a kindergartner. And my mom, luckily, I say a lot of this is my mom because she was like, no, she's normal. She just doesn't walk right. And they made me do all of this stuff to go to kindergarten. And the head of the school district at the time, son, was also going into kindergarten. And she's like, you're a nice kid and I want you to be a nice kid, but I want you to be smarter than that one. Just because it was the superintendent's kid, just so I could show him up for her. So that's kind of where it all started, you could say, for me. So anyhow, much later on, I was, doing the school, what am I going to be when I grow up thing, and had no clue as a 19-year-old what I wanted to do the rest of my life. And I had always been into the medical field and wanted to make a difference in the medical field, being on the other side of it. I wanted to kind of put my foot in it as to show that it could be better. So I thought I'd be a nurse. And I should have known that was going to be an issue my first day of freshman orientation. I was enrolled by the director of nursing. They don't enroll. And she's like, I don't think this is right for you. I'm like, I'm a freshman. But she gave me every syllabus for the entire 4 years, and I had to go through and prove that I could do it. And the only thing I couldn't do was lift a 300-pound man by myself. And I was like, I would love to see some of these little 90-pound girls lift up a 300-pound man by themselves. But I couldn't do it. So they would not let me into the program, which just was awful, because I am, if anybody knows me, I'm not one to just be like, okay, I'll do something else. So the fact that I had to change shifts with everything was not easy. But in my pre-nursing classes, I took a nutrition course, and it's like, well, that was fun. That's still kind of the same thing. I'll be a dietitian. And I also, background, I'm from Lawrence, and the only place to get your undergrad for dietetics in Kansas is K-State. So they're like, okay, move to K-State. And I'm like, oh, for the love of God, what are you all people doing to me? I don't get to be what I want to be when I grow up, and now you're making me move to Manhattan. but it worked out and I became a dietitian and I've liked it. So it's worked out. So that's my
Yeah.
really long answer of how I got here.
That's okay. You
So,
you ended up where you needed to be. That's the important part.
yes.
Thanks for that. Well, the second question, what are assumptions, and you touched on that a little bit, Lindsay, but what are assumptions or generalizations that others make about you that are inaccurate, that are misunderstood, misguided, or simply not true? And I will start with Taylor.
I think this was
So
hard.
things people say or think about you that is not true, they're inaccurate or misunderstood or simply just misguided.
Yeah, I think that I feel like there's a lot. And I feel like it's hard because like it just varies so much. But that it's a choice. I still get that one. It blows my mind. Like, in all honesty, like if I could just be a straight cis person, I would, and that makes me so sad. But it is what it is. And I think also that it's like politicizing my identity, that it's like there's, some sort of like political agenda or something. I don't even know how to say it. I should have written it down. There was March 31st is Trans Day of Visibility. And when I was like going through trying to find something to post for my group practice, it was literally, I was just like, I just shut down because it was just, I got so sad. Like, it was just, everyone has an opinion on, me and my community and what we should or shouldn't be, or that we don't exist, or they're just making it up, or that it's just some sort of social political agenda, or that, like people are, forcing it on children. But the thing is, I can remember ever since I can remember that I was like, I'm not quite a girl. Like, I've not being able to like figure out how do I reconcile this. So it's just like all this just turmoil, like ever since I can remember. And right now I'm at my dad's house. We're doing a celebration of life. My mom, she passed away a year ago. We couldn't have a funeral. And so I've been going through like pictures over the past several days, like putting together a video for this memorial. And I was just like, wow, that is not a little girl. And looking through all these pictures, I was just like, that's not a little girl in any of these pictures. So they never was like stereotypically, traditional. Yeah, I guess that would be like, yeah, it's just that it's not a choice, not not something that's not very well. But yeah, I'm pretty secure in who I am, and most of the people in my community are too. It's actually kind of cool, I think, that I actually think about my gender. Most people just kind of don't think about it, and it's like, if we've put this much thought into it, how can it possibly not be real? If you think about it and just kind of flip it, which is actually, I think, kind of cool. That it's like, think about it.
Thank you for that. Jessica, how about you?
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh. So my life is kind of regarding, being Hispanic. I had two different transitions based off of where I lived. When I was younger, I was around a lot of the Hispanic community, and it was normal. Everybody looked very similar, other than when we went to school. I remember being in first grade and my first grade teacher putting me into a class where other students that were more Spanish speaking were placed in to help them learn English. Now, when at that time point, there was nothing wrong with my English. I mainly spoke English at home, and it was kind of I remember my friends growing up were just like, it's so weird. Your mom like gets on to you in Spanish and you're responding back to her in English. Like, it's just like, it was different. But I remember that part of it. And then our teachers encouraging us whenever we go home to not speak Spanish, that we need to be practicing our English. Just a little background about me. Born in Texas, lived in the US all my life. So it's very different to be treated that way when technically this is home. So, and then in junior high and high school, we moved to Omaha, Nebraska. And in the area that we lived in, I went to a private elementary, junior high, and high school. And being the maybe one or two of the Hispanics that were there, I had a lot of racial slurs of, that you're a wetback, you're a beaner, that you don't, you don't belong here. You need to go back over to the, swim across the ocean. Just the typical, I know kids they can be cruel, but I received a lot of that when I was born and raised here. So that was really hard to deal with, the assumptions of, because people saw me what I look like and they just automatically assumed that I was either illegal or I didn't speak English very well. It was different growing up that way.
Just a quick question too, as a follow-up to that. Have you found that if you go different places in the US, you're assumed to be from somewhere different? Like if you're here, they assume you're from Mexico, but if you were, say, in New York, you would be Puerto Rico, or if you're in Miami, they think you're from Cuba or something like that too. Have you kind of run across that too?
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes people are surprised even if I say Hispanic or that I'm part of the Latinx community. They're like, it's just like,
are you sure?
Well, the funny thing is I know Janina and I had this conversation earlier. I did the 23andMe DNA, and I found out that I'm actually 50% Native. And I don't say Native American because to that community, that is considered, it's not received very well. But I just found out that, I'm a part of the Native community. And even though I do have Spanish and Portuguese in my background, it's different. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Lindsay, you kind of touched on it earlier, but would you like to expand a little bit more on
Sure.
how people
And
misunderstand?
I think just overall, the thing that I've seen the most is that if your body is broken, so is your brain. And so I got a lot of deaf and dumb. I still do. It's when I'm married also, which people are also like, oh, what's his disability? And I went, he's married to me? And I don't know, because he's not. But it's just, I'm not with my kind. And I've had somebody say that before. So I'm not even human. So, and I also have an 8-year-old, and they go, "Oh, did you adopt?" And I'm like, "Nope, I had him." Then I've actually been asked how I got pregnant, and was like, "Did we not learn that in junior high?" That's a long conversation for later. So there's just lots of assumptions that happen with wheelchairs, that from deaf and dumb to I would never have a job. I've heard physicians tell families that be prepared to take care of your child the rest of their life, because they're probably not going to get married and have jobs and whatnot. And the kid's a toddler. And I'm like, maybe, depending on the diagnosis, but maybe not, you know? So you don't know with a 3-year-old what you're going to get. So that's my big thing, probably, is the assumptions that I'm broken.
And do you see any pushback for you as you practice dietetics? Like, as far as clients, I mean, the first time they see you, what's the reaction there?
Well, I work in a peds hospital, so the families actually really like having me around, but sometimes I have to be like, all right, let's talk about food. Because they'll be like, how do you get your wheelchair in the car? You drive? How did you figure out how to drive? And their kid's like 3. I'm like, so I go through, they'll figure it out. By the time they're 3, who knows what technology that, they'll be when they're turned 16. So we end up going on these wild tangents. And so then I have to bring them back to like, okay, we have like 10 minutes now. So can we talk about your kids' tube feeding? I don't know if they're going to drive in 15 years. I don't. So that's been nice, is they get me and I get them on more of a personal level, which I like as a dietetic, as I'm an outpatient dietitian, is I know my families. I know the parents' names. I know what they like to eat. I could do all of my kids' food histories right now. Because they will not divulge out of their 6 foods that they eat. But that's a different thing. But it's more from other medical staff that I've had issues with. I've spina bifida is what I have. Everybody never wants to ask. I have spina bifida. And if you're in the medical field, usually there's a look with spina bifida and they go, oh yeah, oh yeah, that makes sense when I say spina bifida. But that doctor that I said that I heard telling parents to make room for this kid to be with you the rest of their life was speaking at the Spina Bifida Association Parents' Day. And so was I, because we both worked together in the Spina Bifida clinic. And so he knew I worked with him. So I don't know if he just didn't realize that I also had Spina Bifida, or just, but I'm like, and like all of the parents knew me and would like turn around and look at me like, does he know you? I'm like, yeah. Yep. So, and then, residents don't know how to talk to me. So I do a lot of, all right, if you can talk, you have to be able to talk to me if you're going to talk to the kids, because you're going to talk to them. Because people don't talk to the people that are disabled. They talk to whoever they're with. And so that's my big thing of talk to the person, even if they can't talk back, talk to them. They are there.
So for you, basically, you see more the assumptions are made based from your colleagues versus your patients.
Yes.
And Taylor, what about you too? Okay. What about you? Same question. What's the reaction when the first time you meet a patient?
I think it's so different. Usually, like, because with outpatient private practice eating disorders, if they don't want to see a trans dietitian, they won't follow up. So that's one kind of nice thing about doing private practice, is like you get a lot less of that than you do at higher level of care. I think I got a lot more crap at higher levels of care. More And it seems to be so different depending on where I'm in Colorado now, and this 10th state / district that I've lived in. And it just seems to be so varied across the country, but it doesn't, yeah, from client to parent to colleague, it's kind of, I don't really see a difference.
Not a big difference.
Human issue.
Jessica, do you have any issues?
Sometimes I just get people surprised about how well I can speak English. I did have a patient once, just wouldn't stop, like, I guess, complimenting me of how well I spoke. And I reminded that person, well, I was born in Texas.
People from
Wow.
Texas.
I get that too. Occasionally it's you speak English very well. And I'm like, English is our native language. I speak it with an accent. So I just emphasize different syllables, but yeah, I speak English. So that's what I get a lot of.
Yeah.
You speak English so well.
Interesting.
Good. So the next question would be, what resources would you recommend to dietetic practitioners in order for them to be more inclusive, have better understanding of equity and equality, and a better understanding of your dietetic lens? And I'll start with Lindsay this time.
There's not a
What
lot
could
of
you do if you had a magic wand that could make everything okay, what would you do?
There's not a lot of resources out there. Well, and the thing with like spina bifida and other things like that, these are considered childhood diseases because we didn't live outside of childhood. And now that medicine's better, we're adults now, and people are like, oh, what do we do with you now? And like, figure it out. So really it's just, there's not a lot of people in wheelchairs or whatever in the community out and about a lot. There's more once you start to look, but you don't just see a ton of people. You don't even see them on TV. There's, they may have an inspirational movie about somebody in a wheelchair that they get to live life again, but there's no just like the girl next door in the wheelchair. So if you know someone, get to know them, befriend them. I'm perfectly fine with answering questions. Obviously, I agreed to be on this panel. Not everybody's like, please tell me, ask any personal question you want to do, like the how did you get pregnant question from a stranger was a little much, but I get that kind of question a lot from strangers, but it's perfectly fine to be like, ask a question, or ask if it's okay to ask a question, and then ask the question. It's okay. The only way is if you ask. Otherwise you make fantastic assumptions. And really just get used to being uncomfortable. I think a lot of people don't like to associate with people in wheelchairs because it makes you think of your own mortality and that you could break too. And so if you just don't think about it, it doesn't happen. And so get used to knowing us as people, because we're people.
Jessica, same question. What would you do? What would you recommend to practitioners such as ourselves to better understand equity and equality and understand what you go through as a dietitian?
So I would say the very first thing would be just based off of the way that somebody looks, don't assume that they're automatically going to eat certain things. Like I'm not gonna lie, I love tacos and I love tortillas.
Not even Mexican.
Like that. But I also have a very like I have a very diverse palate to where I will honestly try almost anything. So when it comes to talking to clients with a different background, honestly asking them first, hey, tell me about yourself. And then just, you know, within what we've been taught, like, well, tell me what are some typical foods that you eat, or, you know, doing a 24-hour recall, like asking them really what are the staples of their diet versus just assuming that they're going to eat tacos. Like, as far as resources go, I'm right there with Lindsay as far as ask me questions. You know, I will typically answer them, but it's in the way that people ask me. So I do get a lot of, where are you from? Well, then I tell people I'm from Texas, but where are you from? The US. And I know what they're trying to get at is that what is your background? Where are your ancestors from? And I think just asking that would be a better way to approach the subject. But if you have somebody of a different background, if they don't want to tell you, you know, like, or they don't mind sharing me what your background is. And if the person says, well, really, I don't want to talk about it, then as a dietitian, you should know that you look at what the information is that they're offering you. Yes. So, and just for information's sake, both of my parents are from Chile. I am a first-generation American. There was a coup back in the 70s, which my parents are political refugees, and they moved to Texas. And that's where they met, and that's I'm here. I
definitely can relate.
Go ahead. I did have a question that had popped up about talking a little bit about the Latinx community.
Go ahead.
I know Janine had talked to me, or we were on this topic earlier about why Latinx. So if you think about it, and I'm not sure if anybody's really aware of when you're having to fill out forms that talk about or asking you what's your race,
demographics,
what's ethnicity. Yes. So for the Hispanic population, we have to check Caucasian. There is that other box. But it's like, I don't know if anybody's ever noticed, there's like Caucasian, and then sometimes there's like Caucasian Hispanic. Like it gets worded very weird to where it's confusing. And then of course, then there's ethnicity, and there is a Hispanic box. But it doesn't really necessarily encompass the whole community so Latin really does cover, people from Spain and South America. It really has much more of a diverse population within the Latin community. And the reason for the X is to not really have that bias for gender. There's, in Spanish, we call, people that are Latin, Latinos and Latinas based off of their gender, but Latinx takes that away.
That's pretty interesting. I myself didn't even know that. So see, learning already. This has been educational. Taylor, how about you? What would you recommend to get people to understand where you are and where you're coming from?
As far as resources go, there's TFED, which is Trans Folks Fighting Eating Disorders. It's now called Fed Up, FED-UP. It's a really great resource. And there's also the WPATH, it needs some language updates, but it's the World Professional Association of Transgender Health. It's your gold standard for all same things trans health related. So like if you're working in dietetics and you need info on like transition as far as like HRT hormone related transitions, go there. I can also send like I've pulled out the charts on those because like when you're working with trans folks and doing like metabolism, stuff like that, like it's important to know where folks are in their transition to know like, okay, where's your metabolism going to be at, things like that. And it varies because like I've been on HRT for almost 3 years now. So that's going to be my metabolism, or now no, hormonally, I'm male now. And so that would be my metabolism is over there. And so that's just really good to know. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot out there, which is why I've been doing a lot of trainings recently. And I do offer supervision. So feel free to check out our site, Side by Side Nutrition. And actually, Jesse's colleague, Kate, I worked with her and did some training with her. And she can do some awesome supervision and training with trans folks as well.
Appreciate that. So a question just popped up in the chat asking that even though I'm the moderator, they would like my answers to some of these questions as well. So I'll go back to the beginning. So I'll start with the first question. So through the dietetic lens, how has being Black and beautiful impacted your career? So for me, I've always been interested in nutrition. Just growing up in Jamaica, we grew everything. Everything was fresh on the tree. And so when I came here, it was a rude awakening as far as how food is produced and manufactured. And to the extent that I didn't know cows ate anything other than grass until I moved to the US. So I didn't know they ate anything else. I didn't know they could eat anything else. And so I remember when I moved here, I lived with an American family because I came to go to college. And I remember one evening she was bringing dinner home and she said she was getting chicken and biscuits. And I was just horrified. And I'm thinking, that is so gross. Why would you want to eat chicken and biscuits? Because in Jamaica, biscuits is what we call cookies here. So just the difference of what I'm like, why would you, so for us, when we say biscuits, and we say, if you ever go to Jamaica and you hear biscuits, they're talking cookies. So it's a big deal. So some of those things, I'm like, what on earth? And so, but I've always been interested in nutrition, and I kind of worked in finance for a while, for over 10 years. And I wanted to do something different when I had my kids because they were young and I was working long hours, and I needed to kind of cut back, and I wanted to do something I was passionate about. And so I decided to go the way of nutrition because I'm really passionate about this. But once I started in nutrition, I have friends from all over the world. I am equal opportunity person. I talk to everybody. My mom always tell me, talk to everybody because use it as an opportunity to learn something. Even if you learn what not to do, you still learn something. So everybody I meet, I look at it as a potential learning experience. So I talk to everybody. I am that person. And so when I decided to go to dietetics, I looked at some of my friends who are from different countries who, when they go to seek medical care and need to see a dietitian for any reason, they just, nutrition-wise, they were not on the same page because the dietitians are prescribing them the typical American diet which is some of the stuff they don't even eat. And then when they try to explain the kind of food they eat, the dietitians have no clue what that is. And so for me, I felt that this was important for me when I get into dietetics to try to educate fellow dietitians or fellow nutrition professionals about different ethnic foods and how it impacts how religion impacts what people eat, and the different resources that they could look through to get some information, because to best serve their client, because at the end of the day, we want our clients to be better. And in order for our clients to be better, we have to be willing to learn and to meet them where they are. So that was important. So that's part of the reason why. So as far as how it impacted my career, that's kind of how I felt that I could make a difference, or try to make a difference anyway. But having said that, I don't know of another Black dietitian. If there's one, I don't know of them in Kansas City. And so the other thing too is because people network with who they know. And that's just typical in any profession, because I saw that when I worked in finance as well. So people network with people they know, or so if you're not in that group that people know you and reach out to you all the time, trying to break into that group is a little bit difficult. And so I think there are things that I probably would have liked to have done that I just couldn't get to do because I'm not as known, because I'm not in the circle. I'm trying to get in the circle. As far as what assumptions or generalizations people make, well, most of the time, as soon as they hear my accent, they think I'm from Africa anyway. So that's usually the first assumption. And of course, when they found out I'm not, or either way, you speak good English, those sort of things. As far as nutrition go, like I said, I just talk to everybody, so it doesn't take long for them to realize that I'm passionate. My passion comes through pretty quickly. And so I think I've been very effective especially on campus, because I you'd work with people from all over, which is why I love it, because then I get to talk to everybody and learn stuff and swap recipes and do all the things, so I'm in my element. And so that's good for me, because I feel like I do a service, or the part of nutrition that I really wanted to convey. I think I'm able to do that in that setting. So that's important too. And as far as what resources I would recommend for people to be more inclusive, it would be to just be open to talking to people. Be the first one. Just be open to talking to somebody. And again, like me, just everybody you meet, take it as an opportunity to learn something, because you'd be really surprised that a simple conversation. I meet people in the grocery store, and my kids, they don't even go to the store with me anymore because they think I stay too much time talking to people. But I'm like, people want to talk to me. What am I going to do? I want to talk to them. I am that girl. And so I was talking to a lady in the grocery store the other day for 40 minutes. This lady, she was just started talking to me about her vacation, and we started talking about food because we were in the produce aisle. And, of course, it's a moment to teach her about nutrition. And, so that's what I do. And so I am that person. So I think if you're just a little bit more open and no preconceptions, just be always open to learn something from somebody, I think that would go a long way in helping us as people in general first, just as fellow human beings, but then also in our nutrition profession. I think it would go a long way to help us be better for our patients. So that's my story. Now on to the next question, and this will be for the panel, the final questions I have before we start looking at some of the questions. So, what do you want dietetic practitioners to know about you, and just overall, what would be your parting message for the dietetic profession? I will start with Jessica this time. You're up, Jessica.
The big thing would be, oh, sorry, hold on, he's shaking.
That's okay.
The biggest thing would really just not make assumptions and try to be as open-minded as possible. And if you do ask questions, yes, you might offend somebody, but have that conversations with them of like, oh, I mean, like, did I offend you? What would be a better way for me to say this? So, and I think that with building clients, that's just going to build a better relationship with them, that it's going to help them be able to grow with what they're trying to achieve.
Good. Taylor?
Yeah, that's literally what I wrote down too. Um, Also, I think building on that is, yeah, just come with an open mind, and just try to always, put yourself in your client's shoes, especially if you're working with trans clients. They have so much they're just up against, up against, up against, up against. So using like trauma-informed language, even if there may be no overt trauma, like, is it okay if I ask you X, Y, Z? It can go a long way in building that relationship and that trust, which is just a huge part of at least the work that I do. And there's when I've been doing this, I think, so many presentations and educational events because I'm just so passionate about this. And I've asked my clients, like, what's something that you want, health professionals to know? And the number one thing that they say over and over and over is safety. So that's where that trauma-informed language can come from, is, not assuming, asking permission to ask questions. And like, it's amazing how far that can go. And just, not asking questions out of curiosity, like, you don't need to know what's in my pants. You don't need to know like what my former name was. None of that. If it's not relevant, don't ask. And if you are curious why, you can ask me. Don't ask your clients. And yeah, you're going to make mistakes. So I think with like also working with trans folks, a system that can be really helpful to put in place is something I like to call like an ouch oops system, because the last thing that you want to do is have that client like comfort you for a mistake that you made. So don't like profusely apologize, because like they're already going to be in like a heightened state. So that ouch oops system can be so awesome. And just having that conversation of saying like, okay, if I say something, you can just say ouch, I'll say oops. That way we acknowledge it and we move on. It's not this huge ordeal. It's just like, oh gosh, okay, that takes so much pressure off of it. And it can be a really wonderful thing. And I think kind of like Claudia, you were saying, like just having that conversation and getting to know people, like, don't be afraid of me. I'm just human like everyone else. And it's a good thing. So, and it's okay.
Yeah, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got something that, everybody's got fears. Everybody, we're so alike. People, we're so much more alike than we are different. So, it's just, my mom always tell me, she used to say, she said, there's good people in the world and there's bad people in the world. When you meet somebody, it's up to you, if they're good, to not bring their bad side out. And if they're bad, it's up to you to bring their good side out. So, there's when you meet people, there's so much there, but there's so much layers. But again, you can affect somebody's day and their life in so many ways. So, and if you look at, think about some of the questions you may be asking somebody, or some of the assumptions you make about people. And if you verbalize some of those assumptions, how that can impact somebody, because sometimes things you simply say in passing, or maybe out of curiosity, but maybe just the way you say it, can impact somebody. It changes their day, and then later on, a year from now, they remember that one thing, because, Maya Angelou said, you may not remember what people say, but you will always remember, but people will always remember how you make them feel. And so I always hope that when I meet somebody, that they will walk away from me, whether it's 5 seconds or 5 minutes or 50 minutes, that they felt it was a positive experience, because yeah, you can impact somebody's life in so many ways. What about you, Lindsay? Any
I would
word of
say,
advice?
I've said it before, of just, acknowledge the person in the chair. I think a lot of times when you go in and you're the practitioner, you talk to the adult, if they're a kid, or their caregiver, if they come in there, whatever that way. But also on the other side of dietetics, I would tell you some of the most unfortunate things that have been said to me have been said by food service workers. People try to be really, really helpful, and they're not always super duper helpful. So like, I've had people rip trays off of my lap as I'm carrying my lunch so they can help me. And they're like, you want this, and you want this, and you want this, and you want this. And I was just like shoving so much food on my tray. And then they're like, okay, great. And then let me take it to your table. I'm like, my friends are over there. Okay, thanks. So maybe ask someone if they would like help with their tray before you make them a plate and set them in a table by themselves. That kind of thing. So just acknowledge there's a person there would be my take-home message.
I think sometimes we try to project what we think people want rather than asking them what they really want. And I think that's usually where some of these become, because we start projecting.
Absolutely. And I don't get offended.
And also too, you're trying not to, I would imagine more so for you and Taylor, even more so than Jessica, that people like, I know I'm supposed to, I know I'm supposed to not act a certain way, but then now I'm trying to figure out how am I supposed to act? So then it's like they overcompensate and then just go way in left field because they're trying not to do the wrong thing, that they do too much.
Right. And I typically don't get offended when people try to carry a drink for me or carry a tray. I can get my wheelchair in and out of my car myself. I've been doing it for a long time. And it's amazing how many people have put my chair back in the car for me after I've taken it out just then, because they're being helpful. So, I don't get offended. It's funny at this point of like, I got it. It's good. Thank you. And I've been followed across a parking lot so someone could open a door for me. And that's kind of creepy when you have a stranger follow you across a parking lot. They're just following you, and it's because they wanted to open the door. But, and so just
chivalry is not dead.
It's not, but it's kind of creepy. And I'm also a woman by myself in a parking lot, and I'm not thinking that nice man wants to open the door for me.
Exactly. And that's the thing. He's thinking he's being nice, and you're like, oh my God, why is he following me?
Exactly. So just, comes back to ask, and don't be offended if I say I got it. I've been so many people that like, when I say, no, I got it, they're like, all right, Miss Independent. And I'm like, thank you. So, but yeah, just ask. Oh, Claudia froze on my side.
Mine too.
So we did have one question, and I'll just wait until she unfreezes here. It's a great pose, though.
It is.
So we have had a question. What are things not to say to a patient or coworker? What things would be inappropriate or would rub someone the wrong way? Who wants to take it?
I'll go from my stance. I'm pretty open to calling me whatever you want to say or ask it how you ask it. It's how you say it that matters, because I can tell whether you mean it as a what's wrong with you, or what's wrong, what happened to, that kind of thing. Or people get mortified when kids come up and go, why are you in the chair? And they're grabbing kids away. And I don't care, ask, it's fine. But, I think it's just with anybody, ask, what would you like, what's your word? What would you like to be called? What would you like to be referred to? If beyond obviously your name, but talking about your difference, what do you want to be called? Because what I want to be called may be totally different what somebody else wants to be called. And if you call them what I want to be called, they may get offended. And they're like, but that other chick in the wheelchair said so just ask. The two heads above me.
I would definitely agree with you. It just depends on the person. I do know that there is the Latinx community that is offended by the word Hispanic. Also, just not assuming that just because someone looks like they are of Spanish descent, that they are from Mexico. I do get that a lot. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that assumptions, assumptions will just get you in trouble. So, just ask.
Yeah, I think this is where language does come into play, at least within the trans community, because it's evolving. And so literally when I went to get my hair cut last week, I go to one person all the time. I mean, because I know that they're not going to be like gross. But this part, and it's hard. Like you go to to get a haircut, and it's like, okay, male, female, and then it's like, okay, you're gonna look at me and choose, what to charge me, and I had to like fight for, what I am. But like my usual person, well, I just signed up late because I was like in a hurry, anyways, and this person was like these, and yeah, all the transgenders, and that's a disgusting word, unless you all would like to be called cisgenders, which my guess is that feels gross to you as well. That's so no, transgenders, it's not transgenderism, because the ism implies a choice. It's transsexual, that one's up for debate. Like some of the older folks in our community are still okay with that, but for the most part, no. I'm trying to think of a resource off that I can't think of one off the top of my head. But you can even just Google like what is appropriate, what isn't appropriate. But language really matters within the trans community, because it's just about respect, honestly. And yeah, it's just listening. I mean, just listen to the way, it's just,
Oh yeah.
and I think the biggest one right now is like identify as like, I don't identify as trans, I am trans. Just as, anyone here, do you identify as cis? Probably not, you just are. But maybe some people do like to use that kind of language. So just ask somebody what their pronouns are before assuming. Ask, so, yeah, it's just ask.
Taylor, I do actually have something to add.
Yeah.
So Taylor, as it was mentioned earlier, had worked with my counterpart, Caitlin Burkhardt, who is also the co-founder for True to Life Nutrition. And because of you, we ask, like, in our intake form, what are your pronouns?
Mhm.
So that when we meet with our clients, we know whether to say she or he. And I think that adds that little extra layer of respect
Mhm.
for our clients, that it's, showing that we are inclusive and that, also respectful. So,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's all about respect. It should like not, okay, here's a list to choose from, not just assuming, just like, okay, what are your pronouns? The end.
Mhm.
And moving on with life.
It's an open box to fill
Exactly.
whatever you would like. So,
Yeah.
There was a question earlier about if any of you on the panel know somebody in the field that is that is in the same situation that you are. So Taylor, do you know of another trans dietitian?
I know of 2 others.
2. Well, that's progress.
I know, it's just like,
We're getting somewhere.
I'm sure there are more, but it's just so right now limited. And I think like, if I'm just going to be perfectly honest, it is so hard to get through school as a trans person. And I know
I
it's
was
getting
just thinking that.
easier, but there's just so many obstacles, so many hurdles to overcome. And then, yeah, but I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, because I was thinking about just a normal student, how hard it is to find preceptors. And I'm thinking if you have preceptors who have, for whatever reason, have their own biases, that may make it even more difficult, because I'm just thinking just the industry as a whole. So yeah, I could see the difficulty just from that end, if nothing else. What about you, Jessica? Anybody else that you know that's in your wheelhouse?
So as far as dietitians, um, I haven't came across anybody in Missouri. I mean, I believe that there are some dietitians that are part of the Latinx community in the state of Missouri. I just haven't met them. I am a part of the DPG. However, it's typically more geared towards, I see a lot of West Coast information, Chicago. So it's not, I need to dig into that a little bit more. This is motivating me to look a little further. But other than that, Janine is also part of the Latinx community, and and it's, yeah, she's the only other Hispanic or Latinx person that I do know that's around.
Wow. Lindsay, any other disabled dietitian that you know?
Do not. I know quite a few disabled people just from different things growing up. And of all of them, only one other person I know actually is employed, which is a systematic thing. Also, just I put it in the chat. I wasn't sure if we'd get to the question, so I wrote to it. Being disabled is expensive. And you don't think about the stuff that goes along with being disabled, that is expensive. And you have to make a choice. One, to pay for college. College itself is expensive. And I was lucky and got vocational rehab, which was a program that helps disabled people get vocations. So, but they're like, I got my master's, like, can we do voc rehab for masters? I've never done that before. So I had to prove that I needed it for my job. So that I got my master's that way. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to afford it, because I went to Emporia for my first school, which is a tiny school in Kansas, and it was known as the first wheelchair accessible school in college. And it was accessible in 1973. and they haven't
Oh, wow.
updated it since 1973. So when I was having issues going into nursing, I went to the disabled advocate, because every school is supposed to have a disabled advocate, and went, advocate. And his question was, the chemistry room's on the second floor. If there's a fire, how are you going to get out of the building? Like, I'll figure it out. It's a burning building. Get out. But onto why I'm here. And he goes, well, do you really want to do that? I'm like, would I be here if I didn't want that? You know, kind of deal. So just getting into school is hard. Getting to the rooms. There was one disabled dorm room at K-State. And it was also on the second floor. So I had to tell them every time I left and every time I came back so they could tell the fire department. Because the disabled rooms were not on the first floor. And if the elevator broke, I couldn't get to class. And so things like that happen all the time, where I mean, just getting jobs, you have to worry about, is the place going to be accessible? Is where I get the job interview accessible? You know, things like that. Is there somewhere I can park? You know, that kind of thing. And those are things that you don't necessarily have to think about. Can I actually just get in the building? Is there someplace I can go to the bathroom? It's amazing how many places that I can't get into the bathroom. And I don't want to work someplace for 8 hours a day if I can't pee there. That makes it kind of difficult. So, and then just with the cost thing, private insurance doesn't pay for most stuff. Or if you do, you have a huge copay. And to pay for Medicaid, you have to live at a certain degree of poverty. So a lot of people choose not to work so that they can get their health care paid for.
Yikes. Well, thanks, Lindsay. For me, I don't know. I mean, I knew of one person, and I think she's no longer in Kansas City. It hasn't been for a while. So that I in Kansas City, I don't know another.
Right. I know a couple social workers, and I think people also assume I'm a social worker just because I'm in a wheelchair. I get a lot of, oh, you're in the social work department. Like, nope. Oh, what do you do? So, yeah.
Oh, wow. There's another question too. And this one asks, do you all wish we covered these topics more in our undergrad? Or at least partly in the internship too, but definitely in undergrad.
There's a lot of stuff that I wish was covered in undergrad that's not covered in undergrad that has nothing to do with this kind of stuff. But
yeah, I think we all, yeah. Oh yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Well, and I think just an undergrad itself can be such a culture shock for people. Just, you know, a lot of people come for these podunk little bitty towns and they show up at a major university and they're like, oh my gosh, there's somebody that doesn't look like me. Because they've looked like they all grew up with someone that looked like them. So.
See, that's where the opportunity to learn comes in. This is your college campus to learn everything. What about you, Jessica? Anything you wish we covered as an undergrad?
I do remember in my internship and whenever I did work at WIC, I feel like I actually received more cultural information than I did in my undergrad. So I think just doing a little bit more education on the cultural diversity of what we might face. You know, I worked on campus and part of the food service company, and I had students that were Muslim and they only ate halal foods. And to the other leadership staff, it was a battle to try to be able to provide these students that, you know, are not from the US, you know, in an area that they've never been in. And then, you know, some of the other leadership staff was just going to let them off of the meal plan for them to try to figure it out themselves. And I feel like with having that background that I was able to receive through my internship and at WIC, I knew that I was fighting for the right thing.
Yeah, that's near and dear to my heart when it comes to cultural diets and all that stuff. That's my passion. I'm passionate about. That's the class I would love to teach, just because I think it's necessary. I think we're at a point where, you know, our country is getting more and more diverse. So our clients are going to be more and more diverse. And so it behooves us as dietitians, just nutrition professionals in general, to, you know, you don't have to know everything about everybody's country and food, but, you know, just some basic cultural stuff. Just, I think it is important that we learn that stuff if we want to be able to be effective with our clients. So I think that's important.
I would totally agree with that. As a clinician myself, and in peds especially, we do a lot of parenting instead of actually teaching food. But to tell a family they need to sit down and have 3 meals a day and 3 snacks, the kid needs to be in a high chair at a dining room table. Well, a Somali family may not eat at a dining room table. They, you know, and they don't have 3 meals a day, and kids don't have their own plate. And so you're telling them to basically, you need to Americanize if your kid's going to grow. And that, no. So, and knowing the different kind of foods. The first time I asked a family if they meant a Somali pancake or an American pancake, the woman was just like, you know what that is? And like, yes. She's like, it's a Somali one. And I'm like, okay. And then we moved on. But just having just that little bit of knowledge of what we think is a pancake isn't always a pancake, you know, or the biscuit thing, you know. There's lots of countries that don't say biscuit. They say cookies because it's how you cook them. And so you tell somebody, you know, have, you know, biscuits, and they're like, this lady's telling me I have cookies 3 times a day. You know,
what kind of dietitian is she?
So yes, I wish there was so much more on cultural foods and cultural practices.
Mine is always the yam thing. When you know, I tell dietitians, when anybody from the outside of the US, doesn't even matter what country really, if you're outside of, if your client is from any other country about America and they say yam, they do not mean sweet potato. That's not what they're talking about. Sweet potato is sweet potato for us. Yam is a completely different staple. In Jamaica, there's like 11 different kinds of yams. And in Africa, different countries, there's like tons of different kinds of yams. That it's cooked like similar to potato. The textures are different depending on which one, but it is definitely not sweet potato. So those are things. And, you know, plantain. You know, I can't even tell you how many people, dietitians I talk to, have no idea what a plantain is, or they've seen it, but they don't know how to cook it. They don't know anything about it. And I'm like, you know, those are basic stuff, especially since you can find them in every grocery store here, that even though you don't buy it, but, you know, once in a while, just go Google or something and, you know, try to get an idea what it is. So if you have a client that asks you about that, then you understand what that is. Because again, you want to meet people where they are. So stuff like that, I think is quite important that we just focus on those things. But yeah, when it comes to the cultural stuff, you know, I tell people, you have patients who are Muslim and you're seeing them for, I don't know, diabetes or heart health or whatever. And one of the first questions you need to find out, especially if you're trying to put them on some kind of, you know, meal plan, when is Ramadan? You know, that's going to be your first question, because Ramadan changes every year. I think it's coming up here in April too. Because they don't eat between sunup and sundown. So, you know, if you're treating them for some kind of health issue, you know, that's something that you have to take in consideration. You know, it's just some basic stuff that you just need to know. So yeah, this is like my passion. I'm totally passionate about this stuff, because I just feel like we can do so much better by our clients if we just have a little bit more information. And Taylor, what do you wish they taught in undergrad?
Yeah, I totally agree with everybody here. I did my undergrad in South Texas. So coming to Kansas City at KU Med and doing my master's, I was like, oh, I got to learn a new way of meal planning. It is not, because I was a minority as a white person. Um, so
This is for sure.
yeah, I was like, oh, okay, Midwestern. Okay, I can do this. um, but it was, yeah. So I think it varies also like where you are in the different like parts of the country. I mean, I feel like doing my undergrad in South Texas was more, Latinx oriented because that's was the culture there. So, um, but I think at least like both with undergrad and graduate school, there was really no like diversity education. I think culturally, across all like kind of diversity education, and I wish there was. It was, I'm just going to be frank, like it was extremely frustrating in my master's degree to try to be who I was or do any sort of that in conjunction with nutrition. Yeah, and it was just like, I mean, it's a part of the work that, we do. You're going to see clients who are LGBTQ, you're going to see clients of every single different background, and it matters and it's relevant. So yeah, I guess, and I mean, when I was at KMed, I was part of like a trans work group, and so I did that as like part of like the hospital, and I mean, it's successful in like changing the way like the O2 system worked, for rooming patients, but that wasn't really a part of like the education piece, which would have been, I think, like beautiful to mesh those two together. But yeah, it was, yeah, I wish it was, I agree with everything.
So I guess the big takeaway, we've got about a few minutes left here, but I think we can all agree that one of the big takeaway is that, being more open is important. That's key, right? Trying to not have assumptions. I think we've kind of figured out that that might be a good way to go. Because if you don't have assumption, then you're like a sponge. You absorb everything and then you process it. That's kind of how I do things. I absorb all the information, then and I process it later. So sometimes later on at night, I'm going over my day and I'm like going over conversation I had with people, and man, that was pretty cool, or that was really interesting. I learned something. So I think if we kind of approach diversity in that way, then we're always open to learn, and we know that. And if we are always open to learning, and then the things you learn, apply it in the things you do, then I think we would have made some progress in our work, and then also in benefiting the people that we're here to serve. Because if people are comfortable around you, they open up. And so you'll be surprised. Sometimes people are like, oh, you just sit there and talk, and it doesn't seem like you're interviewing somebody. And I'm thinking, do you know how much information I'm getting from them just sitting here chit-chatting? You have no idea how much information I just got. So it's not about sitting here and have a list of stuff that you need to go down a list and this is it, because especially, and as a foreigner, I know this because it's hard to sometimes be comfortable when you're around people that you're not familiar with, and you're talking about, you're already concerned about your own cultural identification or your cultural misgivings or whatever. So you got to remember that you may be uncomfortable, but your client is uncomfortable too. So part of your job is to kind of try to I always look at it as, let me try to make them as comfortable as possible. And then as long as they're as comfortable as possible, then I think I'll be able to do my job. So I don't worry about how I'm feeling. I always more concerned about how they're feeling and how to get them to be at ease. Because I think if you do that, then you can get the best out of people, because people, they're more relaxed. And so they're more willing to open up, because that trust is huge. And and as I said, this, one of the other things to keep in mind as well, that when you're dealing with people from other countries too, there's some people where religion is a big thing. And so there's certain rules, that, you don't, especially if you're Muslim, you can't, a guy is a woman, woman won't go to a male practitioner because can't see her hair. I've got Muslim friends, so I know, they'll call me, who's your gynecologist? Oops, mine is a guy. She can't go to her. So, she's got to, let me find somebody else, so those are things that, and so the same thing with any, there's some cultures, they don't look you in the eye and I know that for a fact, because when I was growing up, if you look somebody dead in the eye, that's considered rude. And then I come here and I will talk to people, and then Americans think if you don't look them in the eye, you're shady. So, it took me a while to get comfortable to like stare people in the eye. I'm like, this is so weird. But again, if you're talking to a client and they're not looking you in your eye, what's the first thing you're probably going to think? Oh, they're hiding something. No, they're just not comfortable looking you in the eye. It's not their thing. But you don't know that. So again, it's those things, that anything you can do and anything you can learn so you can make them comfortable, that will help you pull in. Because once they feel like they're not comfortable, you're not getting information, or at least not enough to do your job effectively. So that's key. So anybody else have any questions they want to throw out in chat real quick? We've got a couple of minutes here left that we can try to answer any other questions that you may have thought of, or else I can just keep talking for the next 5 minutes. I can do that.
I really, really appreciate being here and getting to talk about all this and having this just open discussion. I think that's just so important, is just to bring it all to the table and talk about it. And like, I feel really honored to be here and have this discussion with all of everyone here, because I think it's just so important and so valuable, and I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you. I've learned so much from you guys. You'd be surprised. I'm sitting here taking notes. I literally have my pen taking notes while you guys are talking. So I've learned quite a bit, and I thought I knew a lot. So see, it's always about learning.
I have too. There actually is a section in endocrine where they work on gender identity and doing hormone replacement and stuff with kids now, which is super controversial, just in case you didn't know that. But when we asked to go see these kids, what growth chart do you use? What is the growth expectation? And I did not know that it depends on the cycle of what they are with the hormone therapy. So that kind of stuff is helpful for just doing our jobs. But they don't tell us these things as dietitians always. Like, the doctors have it, but they keep, even like sometimes that section of the note is separate, of like, you don't need to know that. And you're like,
but you do.
But I do.
It's so relevant, and it's
But I do.
It's not like some big secret or anything.
No. And I think, at the Children's Mercy is very good about being very like gender positive. I don't know the great word for it, but like, you can change your, it's not always an M or an F in the chart, which is nice. But then as a dietitian, you're like, but what growth chart do I use? And so, and I also, if you have someone that is transitioning to male but was female, and you go in with your pink growth chart, they're gonna look at you like, I don't want that great pink growth chart. So, at least I would be weirded. I'm weirded out being like, here's my pink growth chart. I know you're not, but so it's uncomfortable for us too. So I think you have to be uncomfortable.
It used to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, sometimes you get the best results from when you are uncomfortable, because it forces you to look at not just other people, but at yourself as well. And, you know, usually that's where the growth happens. So I think that's important, that it's okay to be uncomfortable. I think sometimes people think they're not supposed to be.
Right.
And I
And I
think
think it's
that's the
perfectly okay to
message.
say, I am uncomfortable and I'm sorry I'm uncomfortable, but let's work on it and I will work on not being
Yes.
uncomfortable. And
Yes.
I'll learn some stuff, you know, and if you don't know the answer, like, I don't know a growth chart to use, you go, but let me ask around and I will figure it out. And
Mhm,
telling somebody, I'll figure it out goes a long way versus, but this is the one you're supposed to use, you know, so.
mhm. Well, thank you guys for joining us this evening. This has been very educational. I think we covered a lot of ground, and I think that we are better for the information, and hopefully we can
Oh, we lost you again.
go.
Oh, so close.
We almost made it.
So close. So close.
Okay, well, hopefully Claudia will join us here in just a few seconds. But I just want to say thank you to our panelists and to Claudia, our moderator. Oh my goodness, I am just at a loss for words. And there were so many positive comments in the chat box. And you guys just did an absolutely fantastic job. And thank you so much. And I'm so humbled. I feel like I have got so much to learn. I just want to thank you all. And also then to provide the opportunity for our diversity inclusion, our student liaisons. If they would like to say a few words, they are more than welcome to. I'm kind of putting them on the spot. I don't necessarily know that I said, hey, you're going to say a few words at the end, but I just wanted to give them an opportunity and thank them for pulling together such a great panel session for us this evening.
No worries for putting me on the spot there, Kelly. I honestly, I just appreciate our 3.5 panelists. I'm going to throw Claudia in there for the half, for your just transparency throughout this entire thing, and just for being a part of this, and for everyone who is here and listening. It just shows a lot of growth on our part, and the fact that you're just wanting to be a part of this. I think at the end of the day, we're all human, and we're not choosing to be one way or another. We just are human. And Taylor kind of said that earlier. And I think that that's a beautiful takeaway. It kind of goes down to the kindergarten thing of just treat others the way that you would want to be treated. And just thanks again. And this has been awesome. And I'm so glad that everyone was able to be a part of this and be here.
All right, thank you, Janine. Cody, would you like to say any parting words? Okay, well, thank you all so much. Wonderful. So now we are going to wrap things up with, and I'm going to turn it over to Morgan Hook, our president-elect. So Morgan.
Thanks, Kelly. First off, wow, that was absolutely incredible. Kind of hard to end after that because you guys were such amazing speakers, but I have to put my plug in. If you guys want to be a part of something like this next year, want to help us grow, get messages out that you're passionate about, become part of the board, we are still looking for members, and I'm really, really excited to introduce our board of directors for the following year. So as Kelly said, my name is Morgan Hook, and I will be the